All right, all right, all right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am James Oliver Jr., founder of the Kabila Founder Mental Health Fund, which provides free mental therapy for startup founders who want it but can't afford it. Co-author of the book Burn Bright, Not Out, Shattering the Silence Around Mental Health and Tech Startups, and husband to an amazing wife, and co-founder of the world's cutest twins. So tell us where you're coming in from in the comments. And please, please, please share this with your followers on whatever social media platform you're watching us on today. Also, invite your friends to join the conversation. This is going to be a great conversation, of course, as usual, right? So as we get into this, please drop your questions and your comments in the comment section or the chat, depending on where you're watching. We will do our best to get to all of them, I promise. And so what am I excited about right now? I'm excited about my new book, as I talked about. It's the most important book about founder mental health ever written. I'm going to just pop the graphic up here on the screen so you can see what that looks like. I'm super excited about that cover because I actually designed that cover with ChatGPT, 45 back and forths with that thing to get that thing right. Actually, I just switched over to Claude, not to get political, but I didn't appreciate that the OpenAI co-founder donated $25 million to MAGA, so the hell with that. And if you don't watch an issue MAGA, you don't like that, oh well. We're not down with that MAGA crap. So I've switched to Claude, and I'm loving Claude. It's really cool. So that's the book. So I'm excited about it because 90% of the book's net proceeds go back to pay for mental therapy, part of the solution, not just good stories. Really, really, really amazing. Let me put this thing down here because I'm doing all the things. I'm producer, director, all of it. Nuts, but StreamYard is good that way. So you can visit Amazon and get your copy of the book today. All right, so one of the things that I love to do is to introduce you to amazing humans doing interesting work, and today's no exception. I have a really awesome guest, and I want you to meet her. Today we have angel investor and growth coach, my friend, Christa Downey. Hold on, wait a second, Christa. I'm gonna bring you a second. I gotta do this first. Bear with me a second. There we go. Oh, there we go. That was such a short applause. There we go. There we go. Hey, Christa.
Thank you.
So good to see you. How's it going?
Good. So good to be here. Good to see you. Things are good.
Hey, it's good to be seen and not viewed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Live and in person.
Yeah. All right. So today we're talking about after the wire hits, how founders must rewire to lead as CEO. And you're super appropriate to talk about this, because you actually wire money. You're an angel investor. So you write checks. You're also an LP in venture funds, which is I think how we met around Kabila Ventures, my venture fund, which I have to actually put a pin on that. That's a whole other conversation. And this actually would inspire me to start the nonprofit. I talk about that in the book. But so let's get into it. We got a bunch of questions for you. And again, if you're listening out there, just drop your questions in the comment section and we'll do our best to get to all of them. So the wire hits, the celebration happens, and then founders sit down at their desks and they think like, holy crap, like now what? So walk us through what that psychological shift actually feels like and why so many founders are caught off guard by it.
Absolutely. And I want to start, James, by saying the reason these founders are getting the wire, they're getting these investments, is because they are talented people with great solutions, right? They have a solution. It's been proven in the market. There's traction there. Investors see the brilliance in their solution, and investors see the brilliance in that talent. And so that's why they're getting the investments. I just want to put that out there. That's a big thing that people need to recognize and celebrate and pat themselves on the back for. Then they realize, oh, now the clock's really ticking. I have someone else's money that I am responsible for, not just managing, but growing tenfold. There are big expectations. Like, that's a lot of pressure for anybody, right? So much pressure. And so what does that look like? Yes, let's say I am a technical person. I've been an engineer, a physician, whatever my background, maybe I haven't managed something this complex before. Most founders have not
Yeah.
managed teams and managed the complexity of this. And so now I need to hire more people. Maybe I've never hired people, onboard them, work with the investors, communicate with them, build a board. I mean, so much. You can only imagine for anybody, you know what it's like, but any listener who has done this can only imagine that's a lot.
It is. It is. So what's so let me go set. So the psychological shift. So all right. So you answer the question. They're caught off guard by it because it's a lot. They're not really ready for that. They don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
And it is a mindset shift. And it is a lot of responsibility. Like I've gone through, I went to Generator, I went to Textiles, I raised a little bit of money. And so I know the pressure. And then, if things are not going great, then you also feel the pressure like, man, I've got to win because I don't want to disappoint my investors. That's, most people are decent and they kind of probably feel some of that, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay,
and the
cool.
shift then is now I'm a leader. Now I'm a CEO, right? I was this person with a product or a service, I was building this product, and now I'm expected to be a CEO. What does that mean? Who is a CEO? What does a CEO look like? I'm a CEO, So that idea of now it's bigger. It's, my responsibilities are greater and I need to be a whole nother person, leader, step into this role that I wasn't necessarily thinking about.
Yeah. So that's a perfect segue to my next question. So how do you help founders recognize when they're stuck in contributor mode?
Yeah. Yeah. Many founders are figuring that out on their own. Some too late, many too late, I would argue, right? Because people aren't talking about it enough. They're figuring it out when all of a sudden they can't manage things. There's, the priorities. Where do I spend my time? Can I delegate? I've delegated, but they're not doing what I thought I'd asked them to do. So that miscommunication, that's actually probably one of the early signs, is the sense of my team and I are not in alignment on what everybody's responsibilities are. And I'm carrying a lot of that weight. So that's often where it comes up for a founder. Sometimes an investor notices or an advisor notices and says, you're doing too much. Like, what are we doing here? Like, let's pull back, right? I'm working with a founder that, the angel investors that had been working with this founder, supporting them, realized, you could use some help with some of this. You don't have to carry all of that weight. So they recommended the founder to me, and I'm working with this founder to figure that out. How do we prioritize? How do we delegate? How, all of those things.
Yeah, I think CEO does not necessarily need to stand for Chief Everything Officer.
Right.
Right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think that's cool when the investor or the advisor is like, well, like you're doing too much. Like, how can we talk about getting some help? Are you finding that founders are receptive to that conversation or not so much?
Right. That's an interesting question. It varies. It varies considerably. And again, some of them are more receptive when they are already feeling that pain. They're already feeling overwhelmed. And so they realize, wow, I better figure out something. I better do something. And what I want to do is help founders realize it sooner and help the rest of the supporters and the ecosystem to suggest this to founders sooner, so we don't have these pain points where it starts to feel late. Yeah,
no, I love that. So my next question. So a couple of these questions are sort of similar. So bear with me here. So there's a gap between how investors and teams start to seeing a founder post raise and how the founder sees themselves. How does that gap show up in the room, and what does it cost founders who don't address it?
Yeah, it costs the company. It could be that if we're not addressing this, the team isn't on the same page. They're not reaching their milestones, and the company isn't as successful. I had posted an article on LinkedIn, and there's some research out there that shows that these are skills that are actually costing the company, right? They can be. So, and then the overwhelm, that's another thing. It costs the founder their health, their mental health, which leads to their physical health declining. It can cost the team, the overload, the burdens on the team, which again, then we're not being productive. I've offered a lot of workshops on building healthy, high-performing teams. There are books out there. There are many people are offering workshops on this topic, right? And the idea is that we can only be high-performing if we are all healthy and communicating and working. There's a framework for this, working together, building trust, all of those things. Otherwise, we're not high-performing, right? So what I see is a lot of the founders are high-performing individuals. They're hiring brilliant, high-performing individuals. And then are they high-performing as a team? That's the big
sticking point. You're talking about language at the top of there. You were talking about burnout and mental health. That's right. Yeah. Obviously, my lane. If you're just now joining us, if I can find this link here, I just recently published this book, Burn Bright, Not Out, Shattering the Silence Around Mental Health and Tech Startups. The foreword was written by Techstars CEO David Cohen. 90% of the net profits from the book go back to the Kabila Fund and Mental Health Fund. If you want to buy the book, here's a QR code right there. You can simply scan that and you can buy the book on Amazon. But I really appreciate that answer there, Christa. So let me see my next question here. So pre-raise uncertainty. Well, let's get to this question. So I don't know if you do know Anika Chiku. So Anika had a comment. She said identity and mindset shift is real. Like Anika's great. She has a startup called Lapipo, and it's a platform for caregivers of special needs children. And she actually is a mental therapy grant recipient for Kabila Mental Health Fund. And, she talks openly about the support she got from us and how helpful it was for her. So I really appreciate Anika for having the courage. It's crazy that that's a courageous thing to do, but it's because there's a lot of stigma around mental health and people don't want to talk about it, blah, blah, blah. But that's not her. So, I appreciate her willingness to talk about that. So I was saying that pre-raise uncertainty is about survival, post-raise is about direction. How does that shift in the nature of uncertainty change the pressure founders feel, and why does it become more isolating, if in fact it does?
Yeah. Well, being a founder is isolating. We know that, right? At any stage, being a founder can be isolating because you're at the top. Any leadership position in any organization, anywhere you're at the top, it's more isolating. You have fewer peers. And so some founders have found great community with other founders. And often at the early stages, you're going through different accelerators and incubators, and you have mentors who are supporting you and community supporting you in a way that feels maybe more connected sometimes. And then as you start to realize, okay, now the other thing that happens is the sort of the privacy or the embarrassment piece of it, right? So at the early stage, people are more willing to admit, oh, I have so much to learn about this. Yeah. And then once you get those investments, people start to wonder, as you talk about mental health, it's the same thing with mental health. It's the same thing with building teams and the leadership. Can I tell my investors that I don't know this? When do I admit that I don't know something or that I'm struggling with something? And many investors are open to hearing and want to know. If you're struggling, we want to support you. And we can talk about that, whether it's with your mental health or whether it's with the team and leadership. Not all investors, many. And so how does a founder know? And how do you figure that out once you're already in that relationship, if you haven't already talked about that? So that then becomes isolating, where you feel that you have to be more private and closed about these issues.
Which is awful, because it's not helping you be more productive. So how are you talking to founders about that? This is a really great point you just made.
Yeah. It's something that, we can work with founders on, where they are in the stages of working with investors. And as they bring on new investors, how do they talk to people? We talk about, okay, you already have an investor. You haven't yet had this difficult conversation. It's like many other perhaps difficult conversations or seemingly difficult conversations. Let's walk through that. Let's role play maybe if needed. But the other piece of it is you and I are out there. We're trying to have these conversations across the ecosystem. Right? We want everybody to be in these conversations. So these are just regular conversations. This is nothing to be ashamed of or worried about. There's no fault on anybody's part. This is just part of life, part of growing a company.
Yeah, no doubt. And so Anika said, most definitely thank you for, here we go. Thank you for helping with therapy. Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure, Anika. I appreciate you a lot more than you know. Um, so no, I appreciate what you said there. And look, we talking about just make normalizing these conversations is similar to what we're doing with the mental health stuff. You know, investors got to lead, founders got to lead. We just need to do this and make it normal so that there's always going to be some people that feel certain ways about certain things, but to the best you can, you got to try to align yourself with the people whose values match up with yours. I know that's hard for founders sometimes, especially if they're raising money. They just got to take the money. Well, not all money is good money, unfortunately. But I understand the tension there, is what I'm saying. So the data shows that more than 2/3 of founders hide their mental health struggles from investors and boards. I mean, what's driving that, and what does it actually cost them? So we actually just kind of talked about that. I feel like you just answered that question. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. You make a clear distinction between therapy and coaching. For founders who've done neither, who've never done either, or who've done neither, how do you explain what each one does and why both matter?
Yes, they go hand in hand. So therapy is really taking care of yourself, your internal self, in ways that will support you throughout your life, right? It's okay, you're managing stress. How am I managing stress? I'll work with my therapist on when this thing happens in my life, this triggers me to spiral or to behave in this way, react in this way. And so how do I then get that under control so that I'm behaving differently? I'm building some different habits around that. And so the ways you behave at work, the ways you behave at home, and other areas are going to maybe overlap, and therapy is going to help you manage that and feel good. So you have ways that, techniques that you can use throughout the day to, manage your anxiety, your stress, and have more joy, hopefully. Right. And so then coaching is more about, okay, let's take this to your work, to your goals, to like creating frameworks around, again, strategy for your business, for building teams. How do you lead? So who are you as a leader? So taking all of that you've learned about yourself and how to manage things and bringing out the best in you as well. Who are you as a leader? When are you at your best? And so they really go hand in hand.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that. I'm trying to show your thing here, and I'm trying to, it's not letting me do that. So I'm just going to put the website back up. It has a timer. StreamYard has this timer thing that will shut off after a while, but for some reason it's not working. But whatever, I'll turn it off manually when I remember. But no, I appreciate that distinction between the two. So you work with founders on the innovator to CEO growth arc. Where do most funded founders get stuck on that journey, and what does it take to move them forward?
Right. I was chatting yesterday with a VC about this concept of leading teams, hiring people, onboarding people, and that many founders come from an individual contributor, technical type expertise background where they've not led a lot of teams or sizable teams, right? They don't have as much experience doing that. And these are the founders I'm really looking to work with, right? They start to realize, oh, wait, now I have to hire someone. Now I have to hire a couple of people. Now I have to bring them together as a team and align them. And that's where things start to stick. So one of the things I do when I meet with a founder for the first time and we're thinking about working together and finding their pain points, we absolutely look at what are the pain points they see. And then we also look at, okay, what's your background professionally and what have you already learned about leadership that you might apply here? And so if they come from a nonprofit leadership background, they may have worked with boards, but maybe it's in a different way, right? A nonprofit board is different from a board. There are some similarities, but it's different in some ways from working with a board when you have a startup. So things like that. Corporate leadership, they might have experience leading teams. And I have to say, the piece is if someone doesn't have that corporate leadership experience, they're missing a lot of leadership techniques and tools and frameworks. I worked in higher ed, but still a large organization for most of my career. And the minute I had my first professional employee reporting to me, I was put into leadership programs, right? So you have these formal programs where you're taught all of these techniques and tools that you can use to think about leadership and managing teams. And this is just, part of the game if you're in a large organization. And so if you don't have that experience, you're missing out on all of the background and the framework. So we can offer that. And the other piece I have to say is even people that come up with all of that background and training and coaching that comes with, a large organization often, they still could use often certain, reminders and practice on things, right? It takes practice to develop the art of asking for feedback, receiving that feedback, giving appropriate feedback that's useful. And so these are things that we can practice regardless of the experience that someone brings.
Okay. No, that's good. So I had another question, but I think you kind of answered it, so I'm not going to ask that one. So let's talk about burnout, because you touched on it a little bit earlier. So burnout is often framed as a personal health issue or mental health issue, but you position it as a leadership performance issue. Why does that reframing matter, and how does it change the conversation?
Yeah. If we don't have alignment with our teams, then everyone's going to be burnt out, right? We're going to be all over the place. We're not going to be using our time effectively. We might be duplicating things that we're doing, or we're not communicating effectively. And we're working maybe extra hours, or we're spinning our wheels collectively. And then everybody starts to burn out. And then again, things start to fall apart, that we're not performing, right? Because here's the thing, at a startup, as you know, we're moving quickly. We are growing at a fast pace. Hopefully. And if things aren't, really lined up, then that's going to hurt. It's going to hurt.
Yeah. So as I'm listening to you talk, because I know you're an angel investor, when you write checks for founders, like how much of this work are you doing with and for them as a way, A, how much are you doing? And B, do you view it as like a portfolio risk mitigation strategy? I suppose you do.
I absolutely view it as a portfolio risk mitigation strategy. I have a personal interest. My family has a personal interest in this all working out, for sure. Yeah. So, some of the checks I write are small enough that they're on platforms where maybe I'm not getting that one-on-one connection with the founders. And yet when I am able to get that connection, this is something that I am definitely trying to integrate into our collaboration, our partnership. I would also say that this is something that I start to look at as, and I think a lot of people, right? We're investing in the founder as much as we're investing 100%. So I don't know that many investors are naming it this way. And yet I would say that is something that people are aware of.
Yeah. So before you write, if you're not on a platform like AngelList or whatever, or something like that, if you're one-on-one writing a check to a founder, are you having a conversation with them up front to see how open they are to you being an asset to them in that way?
No.
Or not?
Yes. And, the conversation, and I know a lot of VCs are doing this, maybe not a lot. Some VCs are doing this. The one I spoke with yesterday are doing this as well, right? This idea of, as they're chatting with a founder, they're going through due diligence and they're talking about growth mindset. How open are you as a founder to growth in terms of your leadership skills, in terms of receiving feedback, in terms of coaching? So when will you know as a founder that you need extra support? And how comfortable are you with asking for that support? And how comfortable are you with someone approaching you and saying, I sense that you need support. Can we talk about this? Can I help you?
So you're doing that. And if they're like, yeah, no, I'm good. Then you're like, no, I'm good too. I'm not writing a check.
Right. Yeah. Good luck.
So do you know Mike Ma from Side Cut Ventures?
No.
Oh, Mike's amazing, man. He wants to invest in like coachable superheroes or something like that. That's kind of his thing. He's so different. You read the book, really? He wrote a chapter in the book.
Yes.
The one about the mirrors on the pictures on the wall. That you are your startup, you are your not your startup. I love all the chapters, but that was one of my favorite chapters. He actually inspired me to do something hard that I was procrastinating with that chapter. So I'm thankful. I actually recorded it. He has a great podcast called alone together is for solo GPs. I think you would really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Take a listen to that. So actually, I recorded an episode with him. I'm not sure. It's coming out soon. He texted me it'd be out soon enough. I don't know. But he's that way. He's like, if he feels like you're not coachable, because he will, before he writes you a check, he's going to roll up his sleeves and work in the trenches with you for 30 days, I think. And depending on how that goes, determines whether or not he's going to write you a check.
I love it.
He's like that. All these controlling investors, y'all. These controlling investors.
Supportive, collaborative.
Hilarious. Oh my God. All right. So my last question. For the founder listening right now who is 6 months post-raise and quietly struggling, what's the one thing you want them to hear today?
You've got this. People have invested in you because of your talent, because of your brilliant idea. So there's nothing to, hide here. Let's, seek the support. Now's the time. It's better late than never. Ask for support and we'll help you get through this. People are eager to help. Again, they want you to succeed. If someone's given you their money, they want you to succeed. So tell them what support you need or that you need support. You don't know what that is as soon as you recognize it.
Yeah, like closed mouths don't get fed, right?
Right.
So that's the thing. So I appreciate that, Christa. Christa's awesome. I met Christa through the Fourth Effect. I think that's how we met.
Yes.
Fourth Effect is a great platform for founders. I encourage you to go check out the Fourth Effect. Breen Sullivan and Kat Gahan are just really wonderful people. They work really hard to build communities, support founders, and connect founders with investors, and connect VCs with LPs, and all these events. And they're really great. So you can see scrolling at the bottom here. If you want to help pay for founder mental therapy, you can scan the QR code in the corner here, or you can simply go to KabilaMentalHealth.com. That's the work we're doing. There's some similarities in terms of what I'm doing with what Christa's doing, which is why I was so excited to have her on. I think you should follow Christa. I tell founders all the time, investors invest in lines, not dots. So, you should get to know her, right? Go follow her on LinkedIn, engage with her, read up about what her interests are, what her investment philosophy is. I don't know if she's are you actively writing checks, angel checks?
Not at the moment, but shortly.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. But yeah, so I think you can connect with her. Her email address is Christa@ChristaBDowneyCoaching.com. Reach out to her, and I would encourage you to say, "Hey, saw you talking to James on LinkedIn Live or wherever you're watching this, and I like this that you said. Game to connect to learn more, whatever." Just be smart about how you reach out to people. Be thoughtful about it, and stay engaged. And again, invest in lines, not dots, and help her connect the dots so she can make a line and feel really good about writing a check. And you got to make sure you're open to coaching.
Yes, absolutely. I'll add, I have I have a resource too. So if anybody reaches out to me, or maybe if we, have contact information from this, I have a resource sheet based on this conversation with some things you can do today, things you can do this week that I'm happy to share. It's a 2-page resource.
Okay.
And then also with your contact information, I'll save that because I am putting together a program. It'll likely be an 8-week program that will be for founders to have like the basics in leadership, similar to, again, if you were in corporate and you were now assigned a leadership role, you would go through a leadership program and then maybe have a coach that you'd work with as well. So I'm building something like that for founders, and I'd love to get both of those out to you.
Awesome. So if you email her, Christa at ChristaBDowneyCoaching.com, and ask her for the resources she's talking about, I'm sure she'll be delighted to send it to you. All right. Well, this was fun. It's good to see you as always, Christa. I'll just stand by right for a second. I'm going to pull us all down and wrap up. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We'll be doing more of these in the future. And this coming May, going to be really busy because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, to have some really cool stuff coming up. So just stand by and we're going to roll out. 1 second.